In 1959, Alvin Kuykendall and his wife Layla owned and operated a bicycle shop very close to where you're currently standing. Located directly north of the Coke plant, across Washington Street from their bicycle shop, was the home they shared with daughters Janet, age 22, and Virginia, just 3 years old. The family, awakened by the commotion created by the fire, gathered next to a large window overlooking the action less than a block away. Below them in the street, Roseburg police officer Don DeSuze arrived on the scene and began to direct traffic around the blaze in an effort to keep onlookers out of the way of firefighters. After watching the excitement for a few minutes, Alvin excused himself to the bathroom. While he was gone, the truck exploded, blowing the big picture window inward, showering Layla and her girls with shards of glass and throwing them across the room. Meanwhile, Alvin became trapped in the bathroom by a 500-pound solid oak chest. Mrs. Kuykendall and young Virginia would die as a result of their wounds. Janet would be blinded until doctors were able to remove pieces of glass embedded in her eyeballs, and Alvin required extensive surgery to repair arm and leg fractures.
The injuries to the Kuykendall family were so extensive that it took a lot of time. Flying glass just cut them to ribbons. Face and head. They worked in succession on Mrs. Kuykendall and the girl and then Al, and spent hours and hours trying to repair their injuries and save their lives. We were in the hospital pretty much for 48 hours straight after that time with very little respite at all.
Officer DeSuze was missing in action and presumed dead. His body, found several days later under the rubble, another victim of the explosion. The hours following the blast would bring countless stories of horror and heroism. One tale from the aftermath of the blast involved a 70-year-old World War I veteran named Harry Carmichael. Carmichael was on his way to the fire, hoping to be of some help, when the force of the blast slammed into his car. It severed his arm and punctured a lung in the process. Despite the severity of his injuries, Carmichael helped direct rescuers to people who were trapped in the debris until he finally collapsed. Quickly driven to one of the local hospitals, Harry Carmichael would die before doctors had a chance to operate. Many of the local men were loggers rising early to make the long trip into the woods to begin work at first light. One of those men was Rufus Wiggins, Jr., who lived near the center of town and customarily would eat breakfast at a restaurant near Garretson's Building Supply. Wiggins' ride to work usually arrived around 2:30 in the morning, so he would walk out to grab his first meal of the day at midnight. Although no one knows for sure, police guessed that Wiggins probably stepped out of the restaurant to get a better look at the early morning fire. He never made it back, and his body was later found under the rubble. Mr. and Mrs. Roland McDonald had also gone to check out the blaze, leaving their nearby home on foot. About a block from Garretson's, the explosives truck cut loose. The force of the blast wounded McDonald, and he was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. His wife's body was found several days later under the remains of the Douglas County Farmers Co-op, just across the railroad tracks immediately to your right.